Welcome to Work Comp Talk, a podcast dedicated to all of the injured workers here in California. And my name is Carmen. If you have not yet jumped on any of our other podcast episodes, this is the moment where I get to tell you, go ahead and check those out. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you leave any comments below. If you have questions, please don't be afraid to reach out to us. We are here to educate you and to give you as many tips as possible when it comes to the California workers' compensation system. Joining me today after a long absence, like forever, is none other than Bilal. How are you, Bilal?
I'm good. I'm good. I think I've been back now. Well, first episode back in, God, there's been three before this, maybe something like that.
Probably more.
So at least,
Yeah.
or more, definitely more than a month. It's been a while.
It was David, Mike, Shane, and then David hosted another one as well. So it's been at least 4 or 5 episodes because we've had the series where we are including the other attorneys as well, which we do thank. And we're going to continue it with them as well. We're not done. And the reason why we're doing this other series with them is to pick their brains from different angles. I love you, Bilal, but I also love how every attorney has their own way of seeing things from a different perspective. And essentially, that's what we're trying to achieve. And today, I get to get you back on track and pick your brain because I think this topic that we're going to be introducing is very important. And that's the red flags that come up in the California workers' comp system that the claims adjusters are looking for. I mean, these guys are notorious. They're trained to look for these little red flags or mistakes, whatever it is that you want to call them. But at the end of the day, these are tips and red flags that we are going to be discussing and picking your brain, Bilal, to be able to kind of get this information out there. So I thought I would start with a quick story about Maria, who's a hypothetical worker who I just came across. And I kind of want to put this scenario so you guys can take the seriousness of little mistakes, little red flags that can potentially change the course of your entire claim. So therefore, Maria, who's a warehouse worker, got injured. She was picking up some boxes, pulled something in her back. She felt the pain, kind of tried to brush it off. A week goes by. She doesn't say anything. And then she finally decides to address it. And her boss then needs to figure out and investigate, when did this actually happen? They start questioning. And within this holding back of the story of when it actually happened, it morphs into, unfortunately, Maria not remembering the exact date, the exact time, where did it happen, who was around her, who saw this happen, which then, as you can tell, it turns into some sort of a snowball effect, right? One day she decides to kind of speak about it. Her boss just has some inconsistencies in the documentation that they're trying to present. As a claim adjuster, the first thing they're going to think about is something's off. Then Maria, while she was trying to keep a positive mindset, decides to go to the beach. She's not doing much, right? She's literally taking smile pictures in the beach. However, she posts these to social media and she's trying to keep the pain out of the picture, but she's in dire pain, but just not showing it. That leads into a snowball effect of, because she was showing certain things on social media, it makes people think the opposite way. So with this story in mind, I'm going to pick your brain, Bilal, and I'm essentially going to walk us through a scenario that is pretty vivid for many people. It's a real scenario that happens for many cases that we see in our firm here at Pacific Workers, which also happen to be the sponsors of this podcast. So I want to start with, why do red flags matter in workers' comp law? Explain what these red flags are. Why do they even matter? And what are they?
I think it's important to understand the state of mind that the adjusters have. You as the injured worker feel like you want your benefits, you want your medical care, you want to get fixed, you want to go back to your life. The adjusters, on the other hand, their main focus is to really keep costs to be as low as possible and administrate claims as quickly as possible to get them in and get them out, because insurance companies are financial organizations. People forget about that. They're not your happy neighbor, they're not family, they're not friends. I think for the most part, the perception of insurance companies is that they're there to have your back. That's what they sell you. That's what they market to you. But they're not, right?
Like the guy from
They
State
are
Farm.
they're public companies. They are designed to take in more money than they pay out to become profitable. That's what they're there for.
Yikes.
And they're gambling. They gamble on the fact that they charge premiums for insurance and that the insurance they agree to provide is going to cost less than their revenue. That's the whole focus of it. And so, to the extent
Kind of.
adjusters are there, they're combing through trying to identify cases that can be defeated, cases that can be settled, cases that they can make go away quickly. And they're looking for these red flags because a lot of times these red flags are the common denominator in bad claims. And so I think they're trained to identify these things because not only is it good for business, but it's also based on some of the laws already in fact in workers' comp.
Right. So a little mistake, a little red flag that they could potentially see means it could destroy an entire case.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've seen it happen in real life cases. One little mistake can tank a case.
That sucks. Talk a little bit about the inconsistency in the forms, in the information you're providing on some of these forms. Like, how important is it to, I don't know, figure out this information and not wing it?
There's a lot of forms that are used in workers' comp, and a lot of them use terms, they use abbreviations, acronyms, things that are like a foreign language to most people who aren't familiar with workers' comp. And I think it's really easy to get lost in those forms and not do things properly. One of the most basic forms that people start out with is something called the DWC-1, and that's the claim form that's used to actually report an injury. A lot of people don't know that their employer is supposed to provide them that form when they get hurt. And that form then gets completed by both the injured worker and the employer and sent back to the insurance company to start the claims process. That claim form being completed on time, and by on time, I mean close to when the injury happened, is really important in establishing legitimacy. I think a lot of times it gets brushed under the rug. Employers tell their injured workers, oh, no, there's no paperwork to fill out. Just go to the doctor. Go to your own doctor. You don't need to sign anything. You don't need to tell insurance anything. Half the time, the injured
Right.
worker listens to them. So I think, even from the get-go with something as basic as that claim form, things can start to go, sideways really fast for an injured worker.
Right. I can see that, obviously, right? The inconsistencies are like, they're easier to happen when you don't have that information on a paper. You've mentioned it in a couple of other of our blogs before and podcasts that it's always great to keep some sort of like black little notebook and make sure you jot down as much information as you can because we forget things. Life happens. Everyone forgets things, right? So the
Yep.
importance of filling out that first form, and across all documents, like you said, there's a lot of documents that take part into a workers' comp claim. How does this significantly impact a delay? Let's say if you don't have that form, the DWC-1 form, which you're supposed to get. What if you don't fill it out in the get-go? Does this delay the injury process more? Sorry, not the injury, the claim process even more?
Yeah, it does. I think it depends on why, right? If I get hit by a muni bus in San Francisco while I'm on the job and I'm in a coma, right? No one's going to fault me for not filling out a claim form. That's just how it is.
Right,
I'm injured. I'm in a coma. I'm hospitalized. I can't do it.
right.
I think where it becomes an issue is when you don't tell anyone or it's hidden away because the insurance company and the employer are two different people. When you're filing the claim, it's not your employer's decision unless they're self-insured whether or not they're going to accept liability. It's the insurance company. And so a delay in information getting to the insurance company raises a lot of red flags to the adjuster because if you were really hurt, if you really needed medical care, why would you wait to report it? That's their perception, and that's what they're told, right? Like, hey, when
That's
you
so
see that
true.
someone claims an injury, but 3 weeks or a month or 2 months has gone by since they claimed they were hurt, and now they're filing the claim form and now they're pursuing it, the
Definitely.
assumption is either A, they're making it up, or B, they're not nearly as hurt as they say they are, and it's maybe a fraudulent claim or something.
Which I think is also important. A lot of people try to pretend to be strong and they hold back what they truly are feeling. You know, they say on a scale from 1 to 10, what's your pain? They'll just be like, oh, it's a 3 because they're trying to be the tough person. But this is the moment where, hint, hint, you kind of want to exaggerate, but not to the point where you're overdoing it. It's like, yeah, you want to say exactly what you're feeling,
Yeah,
right? You
what's the
don't want to hold
saying?
the situation back.
Squeaky wheel gets the grease,
Hmm.
right? Like if you don't talk about it, no one's going to know about it. Like you can't bring it up later. It's supremely important that you're vulnerable about your body and whatever symptoms you're experiencing, and at least if you feel like you're maybe hurt, at least just go to the doctor once and get checked out, you know?
Yeah.
There's no harm in filing the case, you know? It's not like you get in trouble for having too many workers' comp cases. It's better to be safe than sorry.
That's so true. What about the lack of witnesses or any supporting evidence, right? In the story that I said earlier about Maria, you know, she waited, she didn't even remember who was near her to kind of say, well, so and so saw it, you know? So, not having these witnesses or any supporting documents because she didn't want to go to the doctor immediately or security footage that could have been used. How does this lead or persuade the case? Lack of witnesses.
It can be a big deal. It depends. You know, if I report an injury the same day it happened, immediately go to the doctor. The medical reports are consistent with my description. The thing I told my employer was the same thing I told the doctor. It's obvious, you know, like let's say I broke my arm and I was working, I wasn't anywhere else. It's pretty obvious. When you have a situation like in your example, Maria, or a lot of our other clients, and I actually have a pending trial on this issue, is the he said, she said battle. When the insurance adjuster talks to the employer and the employer says, well, yeah, they told me they were hurt, but it was 3 weeks ago and no one saw it, no one witnessed it. I didn't know about it till 3 weeks later. The adjuster might deny the case and say, you know what, we don't believe you are actually hurt at work. Factually, we have no reason to believe that what you say is true. At the end of the day, if Maria were to pursue her case and it were denied like that, she would have to go to trial. And it would be her word against the employer's word. And maybe that's not that bad if the employer's being honest. But what if the employer lies and says, not only did she not tell me 3 weeks later, she just never told me at all, just making it
Yikes.
up, which
Okay.
we've had happen. So it can kill the case entirely.
That's sad. Okay, that's a huge red flag. How about inconsistencies? You know, you were talking about earlier, you know, if someone doesn't say they got hurt in the beginning, or if someone says, I know we were mentioning this, oh, I'm not that really hurt. And then all of a sudden you do have a broken arm and stuff like that. So these inconsistencies fall in line with, I don't know, gaps that you forgot to tell the doctor or pre-existing conditions, because I know that's also another thing. Like, say something had happened to you prior to this injury and we didn't say it, and now you want to add that pre-existing injury to this injury. Like, how does that flow in a case?
I mean, your credibility is everything for the doctors. So if you if you lie about pre-existing problems, like
Is
if
it going to
you
come up?
yeah, like let's say you hurt your back before in a car accident and then you're working at Home Depot or something and you slip and fall and hurt your back again. When you go to that first medical appointment and throughout your time seeing doctors, they're going to ask you, have you hurt your back before? Have you been in car accidents? Have you had prior work comp cases? And you say no, I mean you're lying, right? And
Yeah.
ultimately if the doctor finds out that you lied or you receive an award of benefits based on your lie, you can get in trouble at minimum. You know, the doctor may decide to just release you from care or say that there's nothing wrong with you, kick you out of their office and refuse to see you again. You know, if you had a permanent disability finding, the QME or your treating doctor can reverse their finding. You know, a lot can go wrong about hiding prior cases. As far as inconsistencies with medical care and diagnosis and things like that, things happen. You know, if I get hurt, I don't think it's as bad as it is, and then it turns out it's really bad. You know, you're not a medical expert. No one holds you to that. You know, it's not bad per se. I think if you're like, hey, I hurt my back, and then 6 months later you're like, well, I'm going blind now, then maybe there's some inconsistency, you know, that's not easily explainable.
Right.
Um, that might look kind of sketchy.
Okay.
Inconsistencies in medical care, it depends on what it is. You know, we've had clients who lose their treating doctor because their doctor gets kicked out of the MPN, decides to retire, or simply just doesn't want to see the patient anymore. And if it takes a couple months to get them into a new doctor, for example, no one's going to fault them for that break in time, you know, where they weren't getting medical treatment. I think as long as big picture, it looks like this person is serious about pursuing their medical care, and at least on a regular basis they did, and their complaints are within the realm of reasonableness and somewhat related, that more often than not, they will get the benefit of the doubt.
Interesting. This is actually not even what, this is another huge red flag, I would say, when it comes to a workers' comp claim. And that's you not speaking up about the incident until you're terminated or you're laid off. Like, you file it right after termination. Do you get that extra scrutiny due to these concerns? Like, what does that unfold to?
Yeah, there's a defense in workers' comp called post-termination. And if you have an injury before you received a notice of layoff or termination, and there's no proof that you reported it prior to the notice, and there's no evidence of you seeking medical care for that injury, then technically your case is going to be barred by law. And the reason for that is there's this idea that if you are terminated and then you decide to pursue a work comp case, that it's retaliatory. Like, oh, fine, I got canned, so you know what? I'm going to show them, and I'm going to get them back by, you know, making them pay me money, kind of thing. That's how the law is set up, at least. I think a lot of times we see it where someone gets injured, they brush it off because they like their job, and so they don't do anything. But then their employer's like, no, bye, we're firing you, you know, because they don't want them around because maybe they're hurt, they can't work as much and stuff. And so we see a lot of potential post-term issues, not even because the injured worker decided to, it was trying to hold back or be retaliatory, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's potentially a very large issue depending on the circumstances. So if you're hurt at work, you know, don't wait, because if you do get terminated, you do get a layoff, it can be a bar to your case, of course.
I mean, it raises concern, right, about your motivations of why you filed it. It just takes it to a whole different level.
Yeah, yeah. And
It's crazy.
if you get hurt, just go to a doctor. If you can't go to the doctor, at least shoot your boss a text, put it in writing, you know, keep some sort of note or, you know, identifying information about who you talk to and when you talk to them. But, you know, writing's always preferable, whether it's text or email or otherwise.
Yeah. What about when you're working another job or you're engaging in physical activities? For example, you know, social media, we mentioned this earlier, right? Do these raise red flags to the insurance companies if they're inconsistent with the injury you said you had? Like, say I'm in a soccer team and I may still be going to practice. Doesn't necessarily mean I'm practicing. However, someone snapped a picture of me and my soccer team on social media, and I'm doing, I don't know, volleyball or soccer with my coworkers after work every Friday. How does this come back and raise red flags? Because it does, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, when you're supposed to be off work, if you're getting temporary disability, for example, you're supposedly in a place where physically you're unable to work. And so the last thing an insurance adjuster wants to see is that you're out living your best life, engaging in hobbies or sports or interests or whatever when they're paying you money to be off of work. That's the perception. The reality is that some people have very physically demanding jobs where they have employers that refuse to accommodate even the most basic work restrictions. And so they're forced out of their employment because they can't be accommodated. They want to work. They're just being told that the employer doesn't want them back. And so if they can still do things outside of work that don't aggravate their condition, that are still within their work restriction, then legally there's no problem with that.
Right.
Of course, you're not supposed to, if you can't be accommodated at one job, you're not supposed to go and find a new job and
Yeah.
collect temporary disability at the same time. That is a big problem. But just
That's
in
right.
terms of the limitations, yeah, like if you say you can't walk more than 15 feet, you shouldn't be playing beach volleyball or doing deadlifts and squats and like running around like you're fine, you know?
You'll be surprised. Those private investigators are for real. They do their job and they catch people. So I guess you can say moral of this story, stay off of Instagram, stay off of Facebook,
Yeah,
try
dude,
not.
don't put your stuff on Instagram. Like set your social media to private. Don't accept friend requests from strangers you've never met before because it might be an investigator. You know, they literally will follow you around. They'll hide in like bushes filming you. Like they'll I had a client who lived, I can't remember where it was. It was out of state. I want to say it was like Wyoming or Nebraska or something, like way out of California, right? They literally hired someone to go all the way out there to his neighborhood. What they didn't know is this guy lives out in like the, not even like suburbs, right? Like he has like a house on like
He's like
land
off
and
the
like,
grid.
yeah, like it's abnormal that a stranger would be driving around there because there's like three people that live there. And so my client called me and they're like, yeah, there's this guy who's been driving around and it looks like he's literally recording us and taking pictures of stuff. Like they will go send people out to other states. They'll send them to gyms to follow you, the mall. They'll sign up for classes to watch. Like they will figure things out. So like putting your social media on private is the least you can do to protect yourself.
That is so true. And even in that case, they can go through your friend's page and they tag you and it's a whole shit show.
Mhm.
So I
Yeah.
guess staying off would be the best. So to keep it all together in a nutshell, document everything. Obviously, keep detailed records of everything that happened, treatment, interaction with people, documents, dates, most importantly. Be transparent with the doctors, honesty with your health. Try not to be the macho man and oh, I'm good, and brush it off because obviously, if you're not really showing what your true issues are medically, then there's no credibility to kind of go, you know. Review your forms carefully. Double check that all the information is consistency. I think is also a huge red flag, and I think a lot of us don't do that. We just sign things or do things or write things without even thinking or second guessing. So definitely keep track of your claim in these aspects so that you can narrow down the red flags that get picked up. But what do you do, Bilal, if, you know, you're already going through these delays and denials because of some of these red flags? Like, what do you do when you've hit a snag? When you fucked up and you put a picture on social media and now it's saying complete opposite? Like,
Look, I mean, there's some things you can't come back from, you know? Like if you commit work fraud and it's referred over to the district attorney's office for prosecution and like they have you dead to rights, like at that point it's water under the bridge, you know. Shy of that though, there's a lot of room to fix things. You know, we've
like a denied claim is at the end of the road.
yeah, a denied case, you know, the thing where the person waited too long to file it, you know, or report it, where there's witnesses that say you didn't get hurt, but you know you did, you know. Even cases where we've had investigators filming people doing things they're not supposed to, there's ways to deal with that, you know. Um, you can
Yeah,
tell them,
hire a lawyer.
yeah, hire a lawyer, but yeah, I don't want to, you know, sell ourselves too much, but yeah, I mean, it boils down to you hire a lawyer. Like if it's me or someone else, that's you should hire a lawyer, absolutely. And there's ways to deal with it. I think it's just like don't give up hope. You know, don't feel like you're deflated just because one thing goes wrong, because there's always going to be roadblocks in workers' comp. It's one of the
Yeah.
shittiest systems out there that we work with, and to the detriment of the injured worker. And it's all too common for people to give up. And that's exactly what the defense wants you to do. They want
Yeah.
you to give up. They want you to feel defeated. They want you to accept that minimal settlement so you go away.
Well, I'm glad we were able to have this discussion and bring this awareness of the red flags that essentially do happen. And it's kind of weird to say it because these are minimal red flags that one might not even think of as a red flag because they're honest mistakes sometimes. And these little mistakes and these little red flags can truly, truly change the course of your claim. And essentially, that is what we are trying to avoid, for you to be having to go and make U-turns and go through all these unnecessary routes just to get to what you truly need, which is to get back to your health, back to work, and take your life back as much as possible. So yikes, it's a scary situation, but I do truly hope that if this information we've just shared of these red flags opens your eyes, or you know someone who's been injured and is trying to not say that they got injured. And I mean, there's just so much to lose from it. So, any final thoughts, Bilal?
No, I mean, I think you hit it on the head. I think the most important thing is to keep notes, document things, keep communications in writing. Don't wait. Make sure you're
Yeah.
honest about the injuries you sustained. Squeaky wheel gets greased, like I said. Anything and everything you feel like's injured, make sure it's brought up with the doctor.
Yeah.
And if you feel at all like you're not confident enough to handle it, you know, don't wait. As a lawyer, we reinvent the wheel a lot. We get cases that come to us that are sometimes years old. And when the case has gone down a really bad path for that long, it's really hard to fix it. And so the sooner you feel or acknowledge that you're not one that can handle it yourself, reach out to a lawyer, please.
Definitely. Thank you so much for your time, Bilal. It was a pleasure having you once more. Next week, we are going to have Bahar Hamidi, which is another one of our attorneys, and I can't wait to connect with her because I am going to pick her brain in regards to the 132As, which is obviously getting fired after you've said you've gotten injured and such, and discrimination. So it's going to be a topic. I hope you guys can join us next week as well. We'll catch you guys on the next Work Comp Talk episode.